Hi, I'm Vicky. Welcome back again. Today I'm going to keep working on the burlesque outfit I am making for Cherry Bomb. So firstly, I want to thank everyone who supports me over on Patreon. You are helping me to continue to make videos and tutorials. If anyone else watching would like to consider supporting me over there, there's a link in the description. So in part one of this series, I showed you how I did all the lace and crystal embellishments on the bra, the corset and the knickers. Since I made that video, I've added just a few more of the AB crystals scattered across the lace. And I've also added the red lace on the panel behind the lacing, which I like it because it just gives continuity with that little gap there. In this video, I'm going to be making the chiffon skirt that's going to go with it. This is going to be an ankle length chiffon skirt. Cherry Bomb is stage kitten when she's wearing this outfit the first time, so she needs to be able to move freely in it and do what she needs to do. I think she's also a stage manager as well, so she's going to be really busy on the night. So what we've decided to do is an ankle length chiffon skirt. It's going to have a split at the front so she can move it backwards out the way if she needs to. It's going to be a full circle of chiffon at the top, which I'm actually going to cut in panels. I'll explain why when we start making it. And then it's going to have a double ruffle at the bottom, so it's almost quite petticoat-like, but it's going to be in black chiffon. It's still going to be quite sheer so you can see the crystals through it, and it's going to go underneath the corset so it will come out from the hip here. So this is my little sketch of what we're doing. So you can see I've got the top of the skirt and then the two ruffles that gather onto each other at the bottom. So this ruffle will gather onto the skirt and then the second ruffle will gather onto the first ruffle, so kind of like this. So I want it to be really full, so when she moves and spins in it, it's got lots of movement. So I've used the lengths to then work out the minimum circumference I need for each ruffle to give me a circle. So the skirt part itself has to have a circumference of at least 94 inches, and then the ruffles have to be 119 and 144 minimum. I might do them even more, but that's what will give me my full circle. You can easily find a circle or circumference calculator online. I just Google circumference calculator when I want to do this and use one of those that comes up. You need to also add on the diameter of the waist when you do this. So you need the diameter of the waist, then add on the length to get your diameter to then get your full circumference. This is the chiffon that I'm going to be using to make the skirt. I picked this up in Lincraft on sale for about $5 a metre, so I bought absolutely loads of it. So I've got plenty here to make a really full ruffly skirt. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut 8 panels that will make the circle for the top part of the skirt. The reason I cut it in panels and I don't just cut a circle of chiffon, imagine you've got your fabric, so you've got your grain going that way and that way. If you cut a circle like that, a whole bunch of it ends up being on the bias, and then when it's got the ruffles on the bottom, the bits on the bias are going to stretch and get longer, and you're going to end up with an uneven hem. So while it is more work to cut 8 panels and sew them together rather than just cutting a full circle, it's worth it because it gives you a better finish at the end, and it uses less fabric as well. Cutting big circles uses up a lot of fabric and there's a lot of waste. So to find out how big I need to cut each panel, I'm going to divide my waist circumference, which is 25, by 8, which is the number of panels. So each one needs to be 3.125 plus my seam allowance at the top. And then I'm going to do the 94 inch divided by 8. So they need to be 11.75 plus the seam allowance at the bottom. And my length is 22 plus my seam allowances. So I'm going to cut 8 pieces that look like this. So that's my 3.125, 11.75 and 22 inch length, and that centre there will be my grain line for each one. I was just starting to cut myself a pattern piece and it was looking really small. I was thinking that's not big enough to make a full circle, and I'd messed up these measurements. So I'd put the radius in as diameter, so my final measurement was too small. So I've just redone it. The skirt needs to be 188, the ruffle 1 239, ruffle 2 289, which means that when I divide the 188 inch measurement by my 8 panels, this measurement here needs to be 23.5. not 12.5. So I got that wrong. But yeah, I realised as I was cutting a pattern piece, I realised it looked too small. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut, I've got this old sheet, so I'm going to cut 2 pattern pieces from that, and then I can use that to cut my chiffon. Okay, so here's my pattern piece. Now I've cut it out and I can see the size at the bottom makes so much more sense for making a full circle when I've got 8 of them together now. Yeah, when I went to cut it the first time, it was that wide at the bottom and I could see that it just wasn't right. So always good to double check because it's easy to make a mistake like that. So now I've got my pattern pieces. I'm going to cut out 8 pieces of my black chiffon. So I've now got all 8 pieces of my skirt cut and joined together, apart from one seam, because we've got the centre front opening. It's a full circle, but I've just left one seam unstitched, so we've got that opening. It's ended up coming out bigger on the waist than I wanted it to. I think I must have messed up that calculation as well today. Maths is not my strong suit today, but it doesn't matter because I'll just put a few little gathers at the top when I put it onto the waistband. Next, because the seams are on the bias, I'm just going to check that they haven't stretched too much as I've overlocked them. And if they have, I'm just going to trim them so it's an even length all the way around. Next, I'm going to start working on the ruffles. So each layer of the ruffles is going to be 8 inches deep. So I've cut some strips the full width of my chiffon and I've cut them 9 inches. So there's a 1/2 inch seam allowance either side. I've cut about 6 or 7 at the minute. I don't know how many I'm going to need, but I can figure it out once I've joined them onto the first ruffly layer. I can figure out roughly how many I'll need for the second layer. So next I'm going to do is overlock the ends together to make one really big long strip. Next, I'm going to join the long length of the ruffles that I've just made onto the bottom of the skirt. So I'm going to put them through my ruffler right sides together. Okay, so with the right side up, I've got my skirt. So this is the start of the hem of my skirt, and that needs to go over this, but then under the one next to it. So I need it to go over. Oh, it's really tricky. Let's do it like that. Over and then under. Then with the right side facing downwards, I need to get this between the plates that are going to gather it. It's quite tricky to get started. If you know of an easier way to get this started, please leave me a comment because I always struggle with this foot. So then it's going to gather my top layer but not the bottom layer and join them together. Let's start. So you can see as it comes out the other side, this layer's gathered, but this one isn't, although I'm almost missing it. That's the idea. I'm just going to unpick it and move the bottom layer over this way because it's almost missing it. And I'm going to go around the whole hem of the dress. I'm finding it really hard to stitch these 2 layers together evenly because they're really slippery. The seam allowance is just varying from like a few mil to a few centimetres in places because it's all over the place. So I think what I'm going to do is unpick it. I'm going to ruffle the ruffly bit separately and then use the overlocker to join the 2 layers together. I think it's going to be a lot easier to keep them even and join them together nicely if I've already done the ruffles first. So ruffling just the single layer was a lot easier than trying to control the 2 layers and trying to keep them even. So now I've got all of my ruffle gathered. I'm joining it right sides together with the bottom of the skirt on the overlocker. I've still got a bit of a bigger seam allowance than I would have liked, but it's going to be a lot neater way to finish it, I think. Cool. So you can see that it's joining a gathered ruffle neatly onto the skirt. I can see my gathering lines there, so I might just run a stitch on my other machine just right along that stitching line once I've got it done, just to make sure it's hidden. So here's how it looks with the first layer of ruffle sewn on, and you can see the lovely amount of fullness we've got, the lovely amount of movement we've got. So I'm going to do exactly the same again to add the second ruffle on the bottom. So I'll gather that and then stitch it to here. I'm going to do that the same way with the just putting it through by itself to ruffle it and then overlocking them together. It's taking more fabric than I thought it would. This took 6 strips full width strips of my chiffon to do, and I've just calculated it's going to take another 12 to do the ruffle at the bottom, but totally worth it because it's going to be really pretty when it's done. I've now got my second layer of ruffles sewn on. I did this one the same way as the top one, so I gathered it just by itself first, but then I did the joining the other way around. So I joined it with a straight stitch on my Singer sewing machine, and then I overlocked the edge, and I found this gave me even more accuracy and was even faster than doing it as I did the top one where I overlocked it and then stitched it. It's taken a bit longer than I thought it would, because I thought I'd be able to do the gathering and the joining in one step with my ruffler. But I think that even though it's taken more time, it's given me a much nicer finish and a much more accurate finish, so everything's quite even. Whereas using the ruffler foot to join it was just making it really uneven. So I'm really happy with that. The next thing I'm going to do is use my overlocker to do a rolled hem all down the front and all the way along the bottom. And I think I'm just going to curve the bottom here so it's not so square, and that means I can just do one continuous line of stitching as I do my rolled hem. To finish the waist of the skirt, I've cut a strip of the chiffon 3 inches wide, and I've folded and pressed both edges in and then pressed it in half. I'm now going to pin it face down along the right side of the skirt like that, and then I'm going to stitch along just on this side of the little crease. So I've stitched my waistband on, and I've also stitched a piece of elastic just near the end here, which is just shorter than the waistband, so it's just going to give us that little bit of stretch when it's worn, just to make a nice fit around the waist. And I've also put a safety pin on the end of the elastic because I'll need that to pull it through and pull it tight in a minute. Next, I'm going to turn it over and turn my ends in and turn the waistband to the inside neatly. I'll just need to trim that end, making sure that the elastic is sitting where I want it to sit on the inside nicely. And then I'm going to hand stitch the ends, and I'm going to stop about 2 or 3 inches before I get to the other end, because then I'll need to pull the elastic through and pull it tight and stitch it into place. Now my waistband is sewn almost to the end, I can use the safety pin to pull the elastic through. I find it easier to do it this way than to try and sew the waistband when it's all gathered up. It's a lot easier to do it in 2 steps. So now I can stitch that to the end, just making sure I haven't got a twist in it. Cool, so I'm going to do exactly the same as I did at the other end and stitch that down. Then I'm going to fold the waistband over and fold the end in and just hand stitch it neatly. Then I'm just going to add a small trouser hook and bar as a fastener, which is easy to undo on stage, but it also will hold tight with the tension of the elastic, plus it's going to be underneath the corset as well. So here's the finished waistband. You can see it's got some stretch to it, and then it does up nicely with the little hook. And then as a finishing touch, just on where the bottom ruffle joins on and about 1 inch in, I've stitched in a piece of elastic with crystals on that can be used as a wrist strap to hold the sides of the skirt up. That's flipped over on me. There you go. So it just looks like a little sparkly bracelet when it's on stage. So here's the finished skirt just on its own with the sparkly knickers. You can still see the sparkles through, which is really pretty. So you can see how full it is. So it's got so much movement for dancing. So that's how it looks just down and plain. And that's how it looks with the wrist straps. So I think it's so beautiful. I think it moves so nicely. So this is really versatile. You could add crystals and trimmings around the bottom. It would look beautiful with marabou or ostrich feathers. You could also create really nice drapes with it. So I'm grabbing the bottom of the side front seam here where the first ruffle joins. And if I pin that up to the side like that, so imagine if that was sewn, you're creating this lovely drape at the front. So then you create that effect, which looks really, really beautiful too. Or you could do the side seam round to the back to create a little bustle. It's just really versatile little skirt that you could do all sorts with. It would look really nice shorter as well, like as a knee length. So do a shorter circle skirt and then shorter panels to create a lovely short circle skirt. You could do it short at the front. Actually, yeah, you could do that. You could gather the front up. That would look beautiful. So, yeah, so this is a really great basic ruffled skirt pattern that you can use and adapt for all sorts of different looks. So I will be back with part 3 of Cherry Bomb's costumes soon, and in that video I'll show you how I made the lace and crystal choker to go with this outfit. Thanks for watching, see you soon.